Blencowe Resources has received another $500,000 from the US International Development Finance Corporation for its Orom-Cross graphite project in Uganda. I'm delighted to be joined by the Chief Executive, Mike Ralston. And Mike, $4 million has now been received for technical assistance. This grant funding, non-dilutive, no requirement to repay under any circumstances. But I'm guessing it's a surprise after the Trump administration had frozen all aid funding.
Yes, Sarah, I'm delighted to be back, certainly with this news. And you're right, there was a temporary freeze. There was a 90-day freeze that they laid down on all humanitarian and development aid when Trump came into office in January. So we've been working very closely with the DFC over that period to obviously ensure that their support remains. But like all of these things, there's a process that has to be run through, and they had to go on a case-by-case basis and work out which projects they want to support and which ones don't pass muster. So I think it's a huge show of support that we have managed to get through this and obviously receive the next tranche.
OK, so what is it about Orom-Cross that has attracted this type of funding? And as you said, with more money promised to come.
I think at the end of the day, we're all aware that the West has got an issue around the supply of critical minerals. And graphite features very prominently on most of those lists, in fact, all of those lists. And at the end of the day, they are trying to help build a project in a safe location that can ultimately deliver an awful lot of critical minerals going forward. So graphite in itself is very important. Orom-Cross obviously is very important to them as well. And, from the day we met them and started talking about this, it's always been a project that they liked and have wanted to support us, not just through the grant funding for the DFS, but also ultimately into project implementation thereafter.
Because I was going to ask, how will this assist the completion of the Definitive Feasibility Study? How far are you within that process?
Well, we're getting close to the end. It's obviously a big process. It's been a long study. There are a number of, issues around DFS with graphite that you don't necessarily get with other metals, such as having to go through this lengthy bulk sample testing to ultimately get qualified with end users who can then take samples and go and test it in their own facilities. That doesn't normally happen. So these and then obviously you have to move to offtake discussions and negotiations beyond that. So these things have taken a while, and we're not far. We're in the process of completing the drilling program, which is the last substantial piece, and that will come out soon. We're finalizing some technical studies, and we're obviously finalizing more offtake contracts, even though we think we're pretty much covered with regards to what we're going to sell in our first phase of development and production going forward. So, I don't like to put a date on it because the minute I do, everybody sort of holds you against that. But we're not far away, and we're obviously doing all we can to get it done as quickly as we can.
So, Mike, pardon my pun, but there's been a lot of buzz about the new Beehive deposits. What's the status of this asset, and is it still exciting?
Yeah, there has been. I like your pun, actually. Thank you for that. I'll use that in the future. I think at the end of the day, we wanted to show the market and show ourselves that stepping away from the two original deposits, whilst we're still in our mining license jurisdiction, but stepping, I think it's about just over 3 kilometers to the south, we're still encountering graphite and obviously the results that we're seeing in terms of the core anyway, because it hasn't been assayed yet, but the results that we're seeing from initial drilling is very, very positive. I think we shared some of the videos of that on social media, and there's obviously been some good positive reaction. The implication of that is that we've always said Orom-Cross is a world-class asset on many reasons, but due to its size and scale. And so when you start stepping out many kilometers away and still hitting a whole lot of the same graphite from surface, and it's presenting all the way down, literally to 30 meters, you start to get quite excited about what the size and scale and ultimately what this can deliver. So, yeah, it's obviously still got to be assayed. We still got to get the grades and understand it better, but the initial results are very, very positive.
And of course, today's news is all about that surprise tranche of non-dilutive funding. So in terms of what the company's going to deliver, in terms of news flow, relatively recent, what can we be expecting?
Well, first and foremost, we're expecting another tranche of DFC money to come quite soon. We obviously continue to do the work that triggers these disbursements, even though they were in their 90-day freeze. So we've got a couple that are sort of bunched up, ready to go, which is obviously very good for us. But beyond that, there's continued work in terms of the DFS, in terms of the drilling that we've just talked about, and the results that are going to come through from that. There's continued work in terms of offtake. And there's a lot of work in terms of funding to take this thing forward. And obviously, we've got to put the funding parties together that will ultimately bring Orom-Cross into production. So, yeah, we continue to work hard, but I think we made a significant breakthrough today in terms of getting this funding, because DFC were always going to be our cornerstone partner, not just in terms of the DFS, but in terms of the ultimate project itself. So we're very grateful to them for their support, and we hope that we will continue to develop this relationship going forward.
Superb. Thank you very much, Mike Ralston, Chief Executive of Blencowe Resources. Much appreciated. Thank you.